Are there such things as gray and dark Jedi in the new canon? Should there be? Now, I know this is going to be a touchy subject that a lot of people are going to be very opinionated on one way or the other, and I'm sure there will be some that completely disagree with me here, which is of course fine. I don't always expect people to agree with everything I have to say, and the last thing I want to do is shy away from a topic that'll likely lead to some good debates in the comments, and something tells me this video hopefully will do just that. And keep in mind, these are mostly just my thoughts and opinions on the matter, so feel free to tell me what yours are after you've watched the video. Anyway, let's start by taking a look at the first part of that question. Are there such things as gray or dark Jedi in the new canon? The answer to that is quite simply no, there isn't. But wait, you might immediately bring up Qui-Gon or Ahsoka and say they're gray Jedi in their own ways. But actually, I don't think either one should be thought of as a gray Jedi. And let's first take a closer look at Qui-Gon, who many consider to be a gray Jedi because he tends to reject or go against the Council's wishes, which is more or less one of the definitions of a gray Jedi. The problem here is, when you really look at it, Qui-Gon Jinn is probably the very epitome of what a Jedi actually should be. He doesn't disobey the Council because he wants to be some type of renegade, or because he thinks he's right and they're wrong per se, but because he is mindful of the living Force, and tries to listen to and heed the will of the Force itself, which is what all Jedi should strive to do. The Council, however, no longer does this. They have become too wrapped up in politics and procedure, and become little more than a tool of the Republic. They are no longer true to their Jedi ideals, but instead true to the wishes of the Republic, and this is ultimately why they fail and will be destroyed by the Sith. Now, one of the main points I think that Phantom Menace was trying to make is that Qui-Gon was what the Jedi should be, and he was one of the last of his kind, and he was shunned by the Council for it. I dare say calling him a gray Jedi would be demeaning considering how tightly he clinged to the ways of the true Jedi when so few still do. And there was no arrogance in him at all. He always seemed so calm and at peace, whereas the Council felt arrogant and even detached from the reality of things in some respect, as if they lacked the connection to the living Force that Qui-Gon had. And I especially love that Qui-Gon meditates during his fight with Maul, which is one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars, because that is exactly what I see a Jedi doing in that situation. And I think it's also safe to say that if he hadn't been killed and instead gone on to train Anakin, it's unlikely Anakin ever falls to the dark side. And I think the reason why Obi-Wan failed in Anakin's training is, well, Palpatine's influence of course, and because he didn't train Anakin as Qui-Gon had trained him. How do we know that? Because Obi-Wan eventually ends up on the Council, and I doubt that happens if he had followed in the footsteps of Qui-Gon and simply heeded the will of the Force instead of the will of the Council. So no, I don't think Qui-Gon should be called a gray Jedi. If anything, he was the only true Jedi we met in the prequels. And I know that might be taking it a bit far, but the simple truth is the prequels showed the failings and the end of the Jedi because they had strayed too far from what they should be. Qui-Gon was there to show us what they should have been and likely what they once were. He wasn't the one who had lost his way and become gray. He was the one who had stayed true. Then there's of course Ahsoka, who is also not a gray Jedi. In fact, on several occasions, she herself says she's not a Jedi, so that really should be the end of it there. But a lot of people also consider a gray Jedi someone who skirts the line between the dark and the light. But again, that's not Ahsoka. She is quite clearly a light side user, but is not a Jedi. And I think her pure white lightsabers tend to imply just that. She is one of the first of a new type of Force user shown in the new canon, one without an affiliation or title of any type. And I think she will be the first of many to come. Then of course there's Pablo Hidalgo of the Lucasfilm Story Group, who on several occasions has flat out said there are no such thing as gray Jedi, that you either are a Jedi or you're not. And even though I don't hate the idea of the gray Jedi, and I think it's actually intriguing to have a Jedi who pushes the boundaries, I would still have to agree with Pablo here, because being a Jedi is really one of those things where you either are one or you're not. And if you stop being a Jedi in any respect, you simply stop being a Jedi. You don't become a different type of one or a lesser Jedi or put into some subcategory of the Jedi. And something tells me that this will be a philosophy strictly adhered to in the new canon, that there never will be such a thing as gray or dark Jedi. However, with all that being said, I certainly think you are going to see many types of Force users showing up everywhere in the canon, that it won't just be the Jedi and the Sith, far from it actually. And some will even follow the gray, which, yes, is officially a thing in the new canon, thanks to the book Aftermath Empire's End, where it gets referenced by a member of the Church of the Force. But they won't be called or thought of as a subcategory of the Jedi, and nor should they be when you really think about it. Because the name Jedi should have a weight to it. It should truly mean something to be called a Jedi. That name should be reserved for the height of light side users, those with, as Yoda once said, the deepest commitment, the most serious mind. Just like Sith should always be the worst of the worst when it comes to dark side users. Those two should always be at the top and bottom of the scale of good and evil, at least in my opinion. You can certainly disagree with me, and I know plenty of you out there will. But I'm sure if you could sit down with George Lucas and have the privilege to talk Star Wars with him, and you asked him about the Gray, he'd probably flat out tell you there is no such thing. And if you've ever heard him talk about what the Force truly is, and what separates the Jedi and the Sith, it doesn't leave any room for the Gray. You then might wonder why he let the idea of the Gray and Dark Jedi come about in the expanded universe, but Lucas never considered that part of his Star Wars. To him, the old EU was always something separate entirely, and he let people run with ideas that, quite frankly, he would have never considered for his vision of Star Wars. Now, you might think that makes him greedy, that he didn't care about the stories being told and he just wanted the money. But I try to look at it the other way, that he let Star Wars stories be told when we otherwise would have had none. And the interest in Star Wars was kept alive in the hearts and minds of many thanks to the expanded universe he allowed to exist. Anyway, yes, there certainly will be and should be many different types of factions of Force users set between the two extremes of good and evil, represented by the Jedi and Sith. And some of them could certainly be Gray Force users who can, to some degree at least, wield both the light and the dark, though controlling the dark side and not falling into its trap should be a constant fear and struggle for those who tread this dangerous path. Wielding the dark side is an unnatural thing, and there should always be a price for trying to go against the will of the Force, or the ways of nature, if you will. But when these characters inevitably start to appear in canon, and they will, trust me, I just don't feel we should in any way, shape, or form refer to them as Jedi, but something new and different entirely. More than likely, though, what I really think we'll start to see more of are those who simply follow the Force as a whole and don't distinguish so much between the dark and the light. And I think that is what the Gray side of the Force will ultimately be. Not so much a new side of it, but rather a refusal to believe it should be separated into sides. And for all we know, there are no dark and light sides of the Force, and that will be the big secret revealed to us in Episode 8, that the dark and light side are merely created by the intent of those using the Force, and the Bendu in Rebels does seem to hint at this very thing. I also think there is a very good chance that Luke is going to train Rey much differently than Jedi have been trained before. In fact, I'd be stunned if that isn't the case. And yes, despite what Luke says in the trailer about the Jedi needing to end, and the name of Episode 8 being The Last Jedi, he will eventually change his tune and train Rey to be a Jedi. I cannot imagine this trilogy ending the Jedi forever. There's just no chance Disney's just spent $4 billion on Star Wars to not capitalize off the popularity and love for the Jedi for generations to come. But I do think they need to, and will, change what Jedi truly are, and that starts with Luke amending the no attachment thing for starters, which, yes, is pretty much the core belief of the Jedi, and will radically change many things about them. But I think that is a change that might be needed. We care more about characters when they have something to lose, or when there's something they want to gain. A true Jedi, in theory, should neither have anything to lose or want anything to gain, and it's hard to make us care about characters like that, or to tell captivating stories about them. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just not easy. And I think one of the problems with the prequels is, to be blunt about it, is a lot of people find the concept of what a true Jedi should be to be a bit boring and hard to relate to. Maybe not so much myself or you watching this video, but there are a lot of casual fans or average moviegoers who don't want to watch movies about characters that are essentially supposed to be monks who above all else should always seek a peaceful resolution to any conflict. It is called Star Wars after all, not Star Negotiations. And I think the great success of the original trilogy was that they took characters that felt like real people from our world and put them into incredible situations and settings. In other words, we understood and related so much easier to the main characters in the original trilogy because they acted and felt like we do. We get what drove and motivated them to do the things they did, and they were characters we cared about and wanted to root for. I mean, how many of us want to believe we could be like Luke Skywalker, who in The Empire Strikes Back put his training on hold and risked everything to go and save his friends, even though he knew he was walking right into a trap set by Vader? I would love to believe I could be that courageous, and that I would face Darth Vader to try and save my friends. That kind of heroism speaks to all of us, and gives us something we can truly aspire to be like. But if Luke had listened to Yoda and Obi-Wan, if he had acted like a true Jedi should, he would have never gone and tried to save his friends. He would have sacrificed them for the greater good and maybe never learned the truth about his father. And if Luke doesn't know Vader is his father, he never turns him back to the light side and likely never defeats the Sith. The Emperor said Luke's faith in his friends was his greatest weakness, but it was actually his greatest strength, which is why it is something he should and likely will teach to future generation of Jedi. And perhaps where he failed with his new Jedi Order and why Kylo Ren turned on him is because Luke had decided to cling to the old ways and teach no attachment, and this for whatever reason led to the downfall of Ben Solo. Anyway, so why do I think people love the idea of Gray Jedi so much? And why do some of you no doubt think I'm dead wrong here and that they should be in Star Wars, and that maybe Luke should train Rey how to dabble in the dark side, to harness it without succumbing to it? Because yes, I can admit that a Jedi who can and will use the dark side when needed, but be able to pull themselves back from the edge, does at first glance sound like a cool and intriguing idea. But the thing is, a Jedi who is powerful enough shouldn't have to resort to using the dark side. Their mastery of the light side should be enough. Just like the most powerful Sith shouldn't in any way tap into the light side for any reason. And could you imagine if Yoda had used the dark side in Revenge of the Sith to defeat Palpatine, and how off that would have felt? Now yes, Luke defeated Vader in Return of the Jedi by tapping into the dark side, but Palpatine was ultimately defeated because Vader went back to the light. And I dare say no one has ever thought to themselves that he became a Grey Sith at that moment, or even a Light Sith. And even though I do think we are going to see more Grey characters coming to Star Wars, and more moral ambiguity in general, and I'm more than okay with both of those concepts, at the core should be kept this fight of dark versus light, and the title of Jedi should truly mean something special again. Because another problem with the prequels, even though it was certainly cool to see, was the fact that there were 10,000 Jedi, which kind of made them feel a lot less special and a lot less mystical than they did in the original trilogy, when we basically saw 3 total: Yoda, Obi-Wan, and eventually Luke. And I think one of the things Disney is going to try and do with this new trilogy is not end the Jedi, but make us truly feel awed and inspired by them again. They're going to try to put the magic and wonder back into them, and give the significance and meaning back to the title of Jedi, which it certainly deserves. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Should Grey and Dark Jedi be a thing? Or should that name be reserved only for the real thing? Let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And if you liked this video, check out some of my other ones, or go ahead and subscribe. If you've already done all that, then thanks for your continued support. If you want to know when I upload new videos, hit the notification button or just follow me on Twitter. And as always, thanks for watching.